Let's start. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming along. Um, and so we'll start with first off correcting motivation. Hi, Sheila. Welcome back from Computer Oblivion. And we'll start our session with first off correcting motivation with refuge and bodhicitta. Um, but before we correct our motivation with refuge and bodhicitta, we will um, maybe spend a few seconds in making sure that our mind is settled. It's good to start, first of all, with making sure that our posture is comfortable, whether we're sitting on a chair or a sofa. Um, it's good to make sure that the body is loosely straight or the back is loosely straight. I'm going to take a couple of deep breaths and scan our body from our toes all the way up to the crown, and making sure that tension, no discomfort. And if we do find and prod it with in some relaxation, it helps. Might be. And in our previous session, we spoke combination of mind that is focused, a shamatha mind, concentrated mind, which concentration is at will, being pointedly placed on an object. We can develop and combine it together with wisdom at the beginning of the session. We're going to count around those 21 breaths, maintaining mindfulness, remembering the breath. We're also going to employ vigilance, introspect, mind, deep breaths, making sure that it still follows. And at the beginning of our session in correcting our motivation, we can start by reflecting that since beginning this time, we've been controlled. There's no occasion. In myriad rebirth, which there was no mind, is we can think of recognize that there's not even a single moment, a single session, a single second. There is no mind, cognition. Our mind, in turn, is being governed, afflictive states of anger, ignorance, and other afflictive states of. We are like slaves, afflictive states. We often do their biddings. We cannot choose. We don't choose to be angry, hateful, repulsed, jealous, angry. These afflictive states of mind they cause us to act in a certain way. It leaves imprints on our mind stream, resulting in habits, resulting in suffering suffering of change, and suffering of conditionality, conditioning us to the experience of hereafter. And so this is our existential state within. And control of our mind. The mind is controlled by afflictions. Birth of everyone around us, controlled by afflictive states. Particularly when we think of waging war in the Middle East, in the Ukraine, in South Sudan, big conflict. All ones are all motivated, anger attack, and ignorance, inflicting harm and damage and pain on millions and billions of people, and now living beings as well. So all of it is based on ignorance, particularly ignorance, at a very fundamental level, believes wholeheartedly things exist in and of themselves, their own power. And so here we're discussing a way to gain control over our mind, to no longer be to no longer be controlled by afflictions, but to be in control. To change the default mechanism rather than being controlled by ignorance. We're going to be controlled by wisdom. rather than being carried away, anger, hostility, aggression, we're going to rewire mind to compassion, love, generosity, patience, concentration, and wisdom. And the way to do that, to develop method and wisdom. And here we're focusing on wisdom, wisdom of emptiness, in order to uproot ignorance and the other, develop wisdom. And we do so through relying on the teachings of the Buddha. We visualize the Buddha in front of us, surrounded by bodhisattvas. And amongst them, we can also think of us as honest and that any other teacher that you feel connected with. And all of them embody the Dharma. I developed true paths, teaching us that all of us have Buddha nature. All of us can be Buddhas. The world for all. So with that in mind, I think we're going to rely upon the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. For the sake of the world for all living beings. We say the words of going for refuge and think, I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. All right. And so, I spoke in a previous session about non-affirming negations, emptiness being a non-affirming negation. A non-affirming negation is a negation in which we do not affirm anything else in its place. We do not imply anything in its place. It's just a negation in which something was negated. And so we tried to meditate on that, and I gave an example, the lack of elephant. And we can think of other example as well. If I say, for example, there is no water, I do not affirm anything else in its place. When we try to meditate on that and to stay just with a non-affirming negation, we find it unsettling. Like, what am I going to focus on? And since the mind is so used to rumination, to distraction, to wandering off, we immediately find other things to latch onto. In order to completely undo ignorance through the realization of emptiness, we need to be able to stay with that, not finding, non-affirming anything. For that, we need concentration. So the concentration of shamatha is vital to prevent mental distraction, to prevent the mind kind of wanting to find something to hold on to, and then non-affirming it, not affirming anything else in its place. We spoke about that, and that it still needs maybe to process a non-affirming again. But anyway, emptiness is simply a negation of inherent existence. So we started to look at the meaning of inherent existence, and through that, mentioned a few terms that we often use in either scriptures or here in Tibetan teachings. Things do not exist by way of characteristics. Things do not exist inherently. They do not exist by their own side. From their own side, sorry. They do not exist in and of themselves. They do not exist by their own power, and so on and so forth. The different terms which are found in sutras, in scriptures, not only sutras but also commentaries, and each one of them highlights a certain angle of the lack of independent existence. And so we discussed that in our previous session. If you look at where we are at the moment, oops. Actually, we started to look at, before that, we started to look at the fourfold reasoning as a procedure for ascertaining emptiness. And we're discussing the first one, identifying the object of negation. This is where we left off in identifying the object of negation. We said that the object of negation is inherent existence. So we spoke of inherent existence being synonymous to existing by its own nature, existing from its own side, existing truly, existing by way of its own characteristics, something that is found when it is sought for within its basis of designation. And so today I wanted to continue with a core definition of inherent existence according to the Prasangika philosophy. Tibetan Buddhism, by and large, is Madhyamika Prasangika Buddhism. So there are different Buddhist philosophies. In general, there are Hinayana philosophies. In Tibetan Buddhism, they were grouped together into a philosophy that is called the Vaibhashika, and then Sautantrika. Both of them hold Hinayana positions, Hinayana views. And then we have Mahayana philosophies, such as the Chittamatra, the Yogacara school, which propounds in general that everything is just a mental projection. So maybe we've heard that before. Everything is just a mental projection. It doesn't exist outside. There's just a mental projection. I'm simplifying what the Yogacara school says. More specifically, they say that there is no external reality. Everything is dependent upon the imprints that we have and the reality that they project for us through our own mind, through the activation of those imprints. Anyway, that's the first Mahayana philosophy. And then we have the Madhyamika philosophy, the middle way philosophy. There are two types of Madhyamika. One of them is Tantrika Madhyamika, and the second is called Sangika Madhyamika, middle way consequent school of thought. Tibetan Buddhism is by and large the Madhyamika Prasangika school of thought, the middle way consequent school of thought, and from that perspective, we say that that's the highest philosophy that the Buddha taught. It's useful if you get a chance in the future to study slowly, bit by bit, those different schools of thought. But it's also helpful to go step by step to look at what the problems are within some Theravada philosophies or Hinayana philosophies, then what are the problems with some Mahayana philosophies? And when you understand what the problems are, you can say that that's not precisely the view of reality, in making your way towards understanding the philosophy of the Madhyamika Prasangika, the middle way consequence school of thought. Anyway, so we're looking at a core definition of inherent existence according to the middle way consequent school of thought. So an inherently existent thing will have an essence or own nature, in Sanskrit, bhavava, that makes it what it is. in and of itself, not just by dependence on causes, parts, or labeling. And Jetsun Kappa, Lama Tsongkhapa formulates it as an ontological status of existing objectively in terms of its own essence without being posited through the power of its subjective mind. So let's try to unpack what this core definition of inherent existence means. After all, the meaning of emptiness is emptiness of inherent existence, not existing inherently. So, in order to understand what the meaning of is not existing inherently, we need to understand what inherent existence is. And so, an inherent existence would have its own nature, which means an independent nature. And that nature would be something that does not depend upon cause and condition. It doesn't depend upon parts. It exists in the object itself. It doesn't exist subjectively. So we can think of things appear to us in general in our samsaric reality. Things appear to us, everything appears to us as if it has its own objective that makes the object become what it is. Particularly when you think of, when I think of things that I'm attached to, coffee, please give it to me every day, all day long. And so when I think of dark chocolate appears to my mind as if in the object itself, there's this or essence that makes dark chocolate is so delicious. And the sole purpose to make me happy. It's not in the way that mind sees it. The appearance is if there's something amazing within the object. There is, um,
Sorry to
I'll get,
interrupt you. Your
yeah,
voice is cutting out. I think it's the microphone from your headphones, maybe, but like
all
every
right,
once in a while it just cuts out and we can't hear you.
all right, let's see how this works.
Seems
Can
better.
you hear me? All right,
Yes.
cool. All right, and so with things that we're attached to, either types of food or our possessions, our house, our status, our own identity, the identity of others, they always appear to us as if there is a core existence to those things, in essence, that makes them what they are in and of themselves, without depending upon cause and conditions, without depending upon parts, and without depending upon the subjective mind. And this is what Tsongkhapa referred to when he spoke about ontological status, right? So let's look at what Tsongkhapa says. He formulates it as an ontological status of existing objectively in terms of its own essence without being posited through the power of a subjective mind. I mean, it's clear, for example, in modern day politics, how things appear to us as if they have their own ontological status, as if they exist in and of themselves. And so politics are now so polarized. And so if you're a Trump supporter or if you're a Trump hater, the person appears to you as if they exist in and of themselves, objectively, in the object of self, in the way that you see them, either as being wonderful or being completely detestable. Not in the way that the mind sees them, but this is the core of their being. But we don't have to go far to look at politics. When we think of the people that we engage with on a daily basis, there are people that are close to your heart, myriad strangers, and people that you dislike. So particularly when we look at the people that incite, that inspire a strong reaction from our own side, we always see some objectivity to them. Objectivity in the sense that this is the core being. The core being is either to make us happy or to make us uncomfortable. It's within them, not in the way that mind sees them. As if we are going to look for that very thing that is making us happy or unhappy, is going to exist within the object itself, within what we call the basis of designation, not in the way that the mind sees that. So this is the meaning of inherent existence in general. How are we doing so far? Is it a little bit confusing, difficult? Barbara, you nodded your head saying that it is confusing. All right, cool. And so a mind has been controlled by not only afflictive states of mind, but also the imprints of those afflictive states of mind. And I spoke a couple of weeks ago about cognitive obscurations, which are made of imprints that produce mistaken appearances to our mind. So we have no choice here. I mean, everything that we see is dictated by the imprints that we have, and we have so many imprints, ample imprints, for seeing things as inherently existing things. And so everything that we see comes with an appearance of inherent existence. Everything that we see around us comes with appearances of inherent existence. We cannot choose, we cannot pick and choose. We can start to develop habits in reminding us that things do not exist in the way they appear. And so if I go back to things which are synonymous with inherent existence, true existence, we say often that things do not exist truly. To not exist truly means that to not exist in a way that that thing appears to us. So how do things appear to us? They appear as if they exist in and of themselves by their own power. They do not exist in a way they appear because they do not exist by their own power. There is no objectivity itself. They exist only in a way that we see them. They exist as being merely imputed by mind. But we'll get to that later when we look at the way that things exist. Now we're looking at the way that they do not exist. We're trying to identify the object of negation, which is inherent existence. So often we speak about the way that things appear to us externally, but it is also our own image, our own view, the way that we appear to ourselves. And so when we divide everything that exists, we often speak about phenomena and things which are other than phenomena. Sorry, we speak about persons and things which are not persons, and they're called phenomena. Persons and phenomena. So everything that appears to us, persons or phenomena, they all come together with appearances of true existence, of inherent existence. And by the way, when we speak about person, a person in Buddhist philosophy is not only human being, but everything that has a consciousness is a person. A mosquito is a person, a dog is a person, um, a bird is a person. And so all persons, in that sense, all living beings are called persons. So when we think of the identities that we have of persons, we have our own identity. There is the identity of others, other people in our life, but also the identities of other living beings. All those identities come to us, appear to our mind with appearances of inherent existence, of true existence. But also there are things which are not persons, they're not living beings. There are cars and houses and water and fire and things which are abstract, right? So things which are not tangible. And even though they're not tangible, they still come to us. They still appear to our mind with appearances of true existence, of inherent existence. We cannot help it. And not only they appear to our mind with appearances of inherent existence, we wholeheartedly believe that this is so, that things exist in and of themselves by their own power. So now we're speaking about emptiness, the negation of that independent existence. We're starting to develop new habits of viewing the world around us in a different way. We're still beginners. I'm still a beginner in that sense. And so, although I can say the words, still, I'm very much affected by those appearances of inherent existence. And I can see that with my default mechanism. When something drastic happens, I react to that immediately, either with a strong attachment, I like it, I want it, or with a sense of aversion and hostility. I don't like it. I want to push it away. So it's a stage of evolution. We're saying the words, we think about the meaning, we get used to the meaning, and bit by bit, we start to change the habits of, we are starting to disbelieve, distrust the appearances of things. Things do not exist in a way they appear. And so often a meditation advice that is given for meditating emptiness when we are now dealing with identifying the object of negation is to make the object of negation appear to your mind very strongly. So for that, we need to choose something that is not benign, that is not simple, but something that will make it really vivid to our mind, really strong appearance of how things would exist if they existed inherently. So, for example, when we speak about the appearance of inherent existence of ourselves, how the self exists, appears to our mind, it is said, imagine a catastrophic situation. Like, for example, you're falling into a raging river and being carried away by a massive stream. How frightful it would be. It would be terrifying. When I was young and stupid, I went on a rafting trip to, somewhere in, where was that? Peru, I think, or Bolivia. Um, and I think that it was maybe only for 3, 4 days, but I was terrified for 3 or 4 days. The rafting boat was tossed here and there, and we got, thrown into the water a couple of times. And so, there is that deep sense of fear that arises in your mind that maybe this is it. And so it is said that in those, when you meditate on the emptiness of yourself, when you identify, first of all, what is it that you want to negate, imagine this really extreme situation when there is a strong sense of self that arises in your mind. So you can imagine kind of being young and stupid and going on a rafting trip, or you can imagine, for example, being chased away by a massive dog. But just as well, you can think of not only extreme negative situations, you can think of also positive situations. I mean, why be so negative, as we say? Why be negative about the world? Imagine how would it be like to be the sole winner of a lottery, um, lottery in the US, finding out one day that you won billions, bucket loads of billions of dollars. I mean, again, there's that sense of self that arises in your mind in which you think that that's it. There is no more problem for the rest of my life. Or how would it be like, for example, I think that many of you are parents. How would it be like to hear that you're going to be, for the first time in your life, a grandparent? Now, maybe there's a sense of a strong sense of love that arises in your heart and happiness. For the first time, I'm going to be a, either a parent or a grandparent. So in all those situations, there is a strong sense of self, of me that arises in our mind. And the I and me that arises in our mind appears as if this is the core of who I am. It is my own essence. It is who I am in reality. So one part of our mind constructs disappearance, and then another part of our mind starts to analyze the disappearance in order to recognize the features, the attributes of that appearance. So is this core being of who I am, is it made of causes and conditions? Does it depend on causes and conditions? Does it have different parts? Is it dependent on labeling? Is it something that my subjective mind labels? Or is it something that exists completely in and of itself as a solid unit, a concrete thing, a reifying reality? I like this word, kind of to reify something. I see it only in philosophical texts. Do you use that word to reify in everyday language, or is it just a philosophical term? Anyway, to make
Also,
something.
it's become more and more popular to use the word reify,
Mm.
to concretize.
And so, I'm not a native English speaker, and I've been translating and reading text for more than 20 years, and there are some terms that appear um, in the philosophical field. And I just sometimes assume that everyone knows these words. Like, for example, when you study about Buddha nature, there's one term that describes the different afflictions that we have in our mind. And those afflictions are called adventitious stains. And I just assume that everyone knows that word adventitious. But lately, in my last visit to Australia, I was touring around with Ling Rinpoche and I used the word adventitious. And someone came up to me and said, I love this part where you say that those afflictions are advantageous. And I said, no, no, they're not advantageous. It's the opposite. They're not helping us. They're pretty bad. They're adventitious. And then the person said that they have no idea what adventitious means. And so I thought myself, that's weird. I mean, you're an English speaking person, we're in Australia. And so I started to ask around my friends. No one knew the meaning of adventitious. I was going around I was going on for 20 years using that word because I checked it in a dictionary. Anyway, I'm getting completely sidetracked. Adventitious is something that I think intrinsic, something that exists intrinsically. When stains are adventitious, it means that they're intrinsic to the mind. Let's put that aside. The word reifying. This is how I started. This is how I got carried away. To reify something is to make it solid and concrete. So we have that solid sense of ourself, a concrete sense of self, which makes it appear, particularly in those catastrophic extreme situations, as if there is this identity, this essence of ourself that is like a lump of something. This is who I am. It does not depend upon anything. It's like it's being suspended in midair. And this is who I am in actuality. So I connected with the meaning of inherent existence. Tsongkhapa says, an inherently existent thing would have an essence or own nature that makes it what it is in and of itself, not just by depending on cause and conditions, parts, or labeling. It would have an ontological status of existing objectively, which means in the object itself, in terms of its own essence, without being posited through the power of a subjective mind. This is the meaning of inherent existence. And so, for example, if we think of an inherently existing car, so once upon a time, I wanted a Tesla. I mean, it's completely stupid. I mean, I don't have a house. I don't have money to pay for Tesla. I don't have where to park it. I'm traveling between different places. I don't need it, but I still want it. And that was before it turned out that Elon Musk was a completely off his socks. And so, uh, and so, I mean, I still want a Tesla, but now it comes with like, feeling guilty about it. It's not like the politically correct thing to do. And so we'll put that aside. But when you think of your car, it still appears to your mind to exist this as a car in and of itself, having the essence of car. And so when we start to analyze that, how this appearance of your dream car or your dream house appears to your mind, kind of house, car, a pet, and your dream dog, appears as if, there is an entity that does not depend upon cause and conditions. It also does not depend upon parts. And it is not merely imputed by mind. It is not labeled by mind, but in the object itself, it exists as an entity that makes it be what it is. This is its very essence. That's the meaning of inherent existence. That's the implication of inherent existence. And so with the first part of the fourfold reasoning, we identify the object of negation, but also make it strongly appear to our mind. And then start to look at the implication. If something exists inherently, it does not depend upon cause and conditions. It does not depend upon parts. It does not depend upon a subjective mind. It exists in the object itself. That's the first part, identifying the object of negation. Is that okay, more or less? Okay. I mean, now we're speaking about cars, but really cars or house or chocolate or a pet or this or that. But really what's one of the most important things is how we appear to ourselves and others appear to our mind, the persons, our identity. Particularly, when we think of our identity, we either identify with our gender, sex. There's a lot of emphasis at the present about, gender politics, gender issues. So we either identify with that, or we identify with our profession. So, if we are a shrink, if we are a monk, if we are this, that, we identify with that. This is kind of the core. This is our core being, or our situation in the family. We are a parent. I'm a mother. I'm a father. I'm a grandfather. All these identities become solidified in our mind. We refine them in our mind, not only on identity, but also the identity of others. So we make this identity appear strongly in our mind and try to recognize how it appears to us to inherently exist, to exist in and of itself. That's the first stage. Then the second stage is to establish the pervasion. So basically, we're saying that if something exists inherently, we need to find it, which means that if it exists in the object itself, it's not just in the way that we see that, but it exists in the object itself. That's the reality of the object. It exists objectively. We have to find it in a sense that we have to be able to point a finger at it and say, this is the very essence that makes something be what it is. It is there inside the object, within the object. Or we can say it's not in the object itself, it's somewhere else. So in establishing the pervasions, what we're actually saying, step here is this step number 2 says that if something exists inherently, we need to be able to find it, to point a finger at it and say, this is the thing that exists objectively, not in the way that we see it, but in the object itself. So we are trying to come up with a scenario in which we're looking at something where it should be found. If we cannot find it where it should be found, we can then draw a conclusion that if it's not there where it should be, it doesn't exist at all. So we are trying to come up with a procedure in which we will exhaust all options. We will look everywhere where something should exist. I mean, something should be found if it exists. And if we cannot find it anywhere, we can then say that if it cannot be found, it cannot exist. It doesn't exist. And so when we come up with an exhaustive places to look, exhaustive list, I can maybe demonstrate it. Now I have here a mug, a thermos. If something exists, it can only exist either in being inside the thermos or outside the thermos. There's no third option here. It's either inside or outside. So, for example, I spoke about elephant in the room. If there is an elephant in the room, it can exist either inside the thermos or outside of the thermos. There's no third option here. So I look for the elephant, it's not here. It's not inside the thermos. But also I look around me in that room. I cannot find it in this room. No, it's not on top of the pink bed, not under the pink bed, not in the bathroom behind me. If I cannot find it inside the thermos or outside of the thermos, it means that I've exhausted all options, and thereby I can draw a conclusion that there's no elephant in this room. So establishing the pervasions is doing that. It establishes the places where I'm going to look for something that inherently exists. And if I'm not going to find it in any of those places, I can then draw a conclusion, say that therefore it doesn't exist at all. So I'm looking for something that inherently exists. So for example, myself as the person. No, I am a person. Teresa is a person. Cynthia is a person. Shella is a person. All of us can look for that person. But first of all, we need to be defining where are we going to look for that person, where does that person exist. And again, it's not just a person, it's that essence of the person, that core of the person that makes them who they are, that inherently exists in essence. Where is it? So in establishing the pervasion, I define the place where I'm going to look for it. So if I exist inherently, the first option is that I have to be one with the basis of designation. And here I'm using kind of this technical language, being one with the basis of designation. What it means is that basically I have to find it within the aggregates, and I'm going to speak about it in a minute. So the first option is to be one with the basis of designation. The second object is being different to its basis of designation. And if I cannot find a person as being one with the basis of designation or different to the basis of designation, I can say that there is no third option, either one or different. There's no third option here. If I cannot find it to be one, if I cannot find it to be different, I can thereby conclude that there is no inherently existing person. So it's all new language for most of us, I think. So if your head hurts, it's okay. I mean, it should make your head hurts. So don't panic. Let's try to make it more slightly clear. So to begin with, when we unpack what a person is, the definition of a person is a being imputed in depends on any of the 4 or 5 aggregates. So have you heard about the word aggregates before? All right, that's good. So even though you've heard it before, I'm going to be picky and speak about the aggregates nonetheless. So first of all, the word aggregates is found in Buddhist scriptures. And basically it looks at it takes our body and mind. All of us have a body and mind, and it breaks the body and mind into 5 things, which are called the 5 aggregates. So our body, no, this physical body is called the form aggregate, FORM, the form aggregate. Then it takes our consciousnesses and divides the consciousness into 4 components. So we have the form aggregate, this is the body. We have feelings. The word feelings can be a little bit confusing or misleading because we speak about feeling as if, I have feelings. No, don't hurt me. I have feelings, but it's not this sense of feelings. Maybe more accurately, it means sensations. So sensation of pleasure, sensation of pain, or neutral sensation. So what is the thing that senses them? Well, we said that, of course, physically in our body, we have receptors, we have nerve system that senses something, but here we're speaking about mental sensations of pleasure, pain, or neutral sensations. So that's one aspect of consciousness, what we sense. Then we have discrimination. A consciousness just discriminates something. It is this and it is not that. Though our mind constantly discriminates between things. Our ability to cognize something is based on discrimination, being able to separate out things to say that it is this and it is not that. So that's the aggregate of discrimination. Then before we speak about composition factors, let's look at primary consciousness. No, it's just, you can say just a consciousness that doesn't have a particular, is not described as having a particular function or particular event. And then we have compositional factors, which is taking all the other aspects, all the other functions of consciousness and groups them into a group that is called compositional factors. So we have wisdom and compassion and afflictions, positive states of mind, all of them are grouped together into compositional factors. So these 5 aggregates formed. No, that's the physical body. And then 4 aggregates, which are different aspects of consciousness. There are consciousnesses themselves. Feelings is a consciousness. Discrimination is a consciousness. Composition factor is a consciousness. Primary consciousness is a consciousness. These are the 5 aggregates. They're found like that in scriptures. I mean, the Buddha spoke about the 5 aggregates, and this is why we speak about them. And we say that the basis of designating a person, the basis of imputation, the basis of designation, of ourselves have the five aggregates. What it means is that, first off, we label someone based upon the physical body. I mean, this is very, very obvious or simple. You know, a new baby is born, and the parents see the baby full of love and emotions, and they decide the name of the baby. So a name is given, it depends upon the body. But not only that, you know, if I ask you, you know, if you know, all of us are watching a screen. So if I ask, you know, where's Sheila? You're going to look at that box of Sheila and see the body of Sheila and say, this is where she is. You know, where the body is, this is where the person is. The body is a basis for labeling something. It's a basis of designation. But also the mind is a basis of designation. So when I go back to the definition of person, a being imputed in depends on any of the 4 or 5 aggregates. Sorry, let me back. Aggregates 2, 3, 4, and 5 are called the name aggregates: feeling, discrimination, composition factors, and primary consciousness. The are consciousnesses, right? Here, you know, if we expand a little bit about on samsara, samsara can be divided into different states. Now, often we speak about the 6 realms of existence. So we have hell beings, pretas or hungry ghosts, animals. These are called the miserable realms. Then we have the 3 higher realms, or the more pleasant realms. So we as human beings, asuras or demigods, and gods. So that's one way of looking at the different classifications, the different divisions of samsara. Another one is into the 3 realms. It's a different perspective. So the first one is called the desire realm. So we belong to the desire realm, in which, you know, most of the things that we engage with are engaged with a sense of desire. I mean, desire goes so rampant in our life. You know, we enjoy objects of desire with our senses, with our eyes, our ears, our nose, our tongue, our a physical consciousness. That's what I forgot. All our life is underpinned by chasing after those objects of desire and wanting to avoid things which are unpleasant, mainly with our senses. And so we exist within the desire realm. Not only that, animals exist within the desire realms and the hell realms, preta realms, all of them belong to that classifications of mainly utilizing objects of desire. And then we have 2 higher realms. The first one is called form, Form. And then the second is called the formless. So form and formless refer to states of existence in which the mind is more subtle, more concentrated. It is absorbed in Sanskrit language is called jhana, states of concentration that can achieve through the development of shamatha, states of existence that we can be born into with a concentrated mind. So it is said that when you attain shamatha, single-pointed concentration in which your mind is at will, not being subject to mental distraction or to thinking, you attain a higher realm mind. You are able to suppress all that desire, all that attachment that belongs to the desire realm, and your mind is absorbed totally for as long as you want to, with physical and mental pliancy upon a single object. If you die within that state, you can be born into the formless realm. into that state of concentration, in which your body would be way more subtle. It's not going to be this physical body that is subject to so many cause realities. Your body would be more subtle. Sounds a little bit science fiction, doesn't it? Anyway, here I'm speaking a little bit about kind of this hardcore Buddhist philosophy. So there are four states of absorption within this form realm, which means that we can go into deeper and deeper concentration. There's the first absorption, second absorption, third absorption, fourth absorption. And then there is another level of existence which has even more finer absorption concentrations, in which there is no longer need to have a physical body. So it's called the formless realm. It's called formless because of the five aggregates. There is no form aggregate. There's just feeling, discrimination, composition factors, and primary consciousness. Here we're speaking about it in a very philosophical way. I mean, it's so out of reach for us. What is this? How can one exist without a body? Is it really possible? I mean, we often think of possibility of existence from our vantage point, kind of we think of how do we exist? And we think that there is no other existence possible that is not related to me. But if you're born into that state of deep absorption, you can be born with just the name aggregates. So to exist in a consciousness only mind, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and primary consciousness, there's still a person. But for as long as they're in that formless realm, there's no body, there's no physical body. So why is it important? Well, it's not important now for us here, but the definition says that the being imputed in depends on any of the four or five aggregates is a person. So you can have a person that has a body, but also a person that doesn't have a body. They only have these aggregates 2, 3, 4, and 5. You might be thinking that, wow, it's pretty cool. May I be born in a formless realm, not have this physical body that is subject to so much pain. It's actually for the practice of Dharma, it's not suitable at all. It's not suitable at all because the mind is so absorbed that there's nothing really pushing the mind with that sense of discrimination to do anything about one's samsaric state. I mean, there's still mind that is governed by ignorance. It's still controlled by ignorance. There is no physical body, but it's still a mind that is governed by ignorance. And when, at some point, when the karma to exist in that state will run out, again, one will die in that state and be born again in a suffering state in samsara. Anyway, let's put aside those different realms of existence. The point is that we here have the five aggregates. The five aggregates are for us the basis of designation, the basis of imputation. It depends upon our body, it depends upon the mind. We label a name. Not only a name as Karen and Cynthia and Matt and so forth, but also that annoying person, that amazing person, that caring person, the affectionate person. These are attributes of the mind. And we also label something. It depends upon these attributes. These are all bases of designations. And it's not that for a person, there can exist only one basis of designation. We can have multiple bases of designation. Like, for example, if I assume that most of you have children, so for your children, you can be, Cynthia, and you can be mother, and you can be, the household householder or what have you. You know, you can have different names which are ascribed to one person. And so why is it important? It is important because when we look for an inherently existing person, I go back to establishing the deprivations. When we go back to this establishing deprivations, when we look for that supposedly existing, inherently existing person, it can be one with the aggregates, one with the basis of designation, which means that if an inherently existing person is found, it can be found either within the aggregates, within the body, or the mind. Or, that's the first option. Or the second option is that it can be found somewhere else. It's not within the body and mind. If they exist, they would be outside of the body and mind. So I establish the parameters for my examination. They can be either in the body and mind or outside of the body and mind. There is no third option for where they could be found. So I go back to that philosophical terminology. If the thing in question exists inherently, if I exist inherently, I have to be one with the basis of designation, which means my basis of designation is the aggregates, my body and mind. So either I can be found within the body and mind, or that's the first option, or different to the basis of designation, different to the body and mind, which means that I can be found somewhere else, not connected with the body and mind, but somewhere else. It sounds a little bit fictional. How can something be found outside? How can a person be found outside of the body and mind? I mean, as an entity. I'm not speaking about kind of near-death experience where a person looks at the body, but maybe I can connect it with Hindu philosophy. Hindu philosophy, where the Buddha grew up from Hindu philosophy. Hindu philosophy, not all, when we speak about Hindu philosophy, the philosophy that existed in India and still exists in India, it's not that there is only one religion. There are actually many religions. Some of them share similarities. Some of them speak about Atman, a self. And the way that they describe the self is that, if I describe it in a loose sense, they say that there's a self that is permanent, that is indivisible. It is unitary. It doesn't have any parts. It is independent. It doesn't depend upon birth or death or cause and conditions. And when we reach nirvana and when the body dies, that person can remain completely separate eternally from the body and mind. So we don't have in our, I mean, the US is a multicultural, multinational country, and also, Australia is as such. So, when I say we, I say it in a kind of with a little bit of trepidation, but let's say Judeo-Christian setup, or, Abrahamic religion setup. We don't have that notion of person, but sometimes we speak about soul or spirit, So a soul, I don't know if there is a dictionary definition of a soul that everyone will agree upon. But when we speak about a soul or a spirit, it seems as if there is that core identity. This is who we are very deeply. It's not the body, it's not our mind, it's the soul. And if when we die and we ask ourselves, where is the soul? Well, it seems that the soul can exist outside of the body, independently from the body. So maybe I'm speaking about the soul because maybe it's similar to saying that it can exist as being inherently different to the body and mind, the basis of designation. So I'm going back to the fourfold reasoning. One with the basis of designation, which means that if I exist, sorry. All right. If I exist inherently, I am either one with the basis of designation. I have to be found within either my body and within my mind, or I can find that person as being different to the basis of designation, outside, separate, independent from the body and mind. So this is establishing deprivation. This is where I have to find this inherently existent person. There is no third option here. So of the fourfold reasoning, we've covered the first two. First of all, identifying the object of negation, inherent existence. Not only identifying the object of negation, but also making it strongly appear to our mind. And the second step is to set out the parameters where you're going to look for that inherently existent self, either within the body and mind or separate to the body and mind. These are the basis of designation. There's no third option here. And so, how are we doing so far? Does your head hurt? Cynthia says yes. Thank you for the honest assessment. I mean, it's good. It's a good step. I mean, this is kind of a little bit complicated. And we have to go through those steps until they become more natural, more comfortable. We start to make sense of what's been said. You know, some people have strong karma of studying this topic in the past. Now, when I say strong karma, probably in previous lives. And if they've done work in the previous life, in this life, it might be easier. Some people find it more difficult. And there will be many pennies that will drop along the way. So this is how it works, you know. So you have to struggle with the initial stages. It's okay. Often we judge ourselves like, you know, I'm not smart enough to be able to understand it. You know, I'm a little bit stupid. I want things that are easier. But actually, with that judgment, there always comes an appearance of inherent existence, because when we tell ourselves, I'm not smart enough to understand it, there's this appearance of inherently existent, not smart person, unsmart person, if that's a word, that appears to our mind, and we completely believe that this is who we are. We exist like that in an actual sense. This is a core being. We are not smart in a core being. Things do not exist in the way they appear. Bit by bit, if we give ourselves time, no pressure, give ourselves some time, we can bit by bit develop better understanding. Scarlett, I see that your hand is
Hello.
up.
Yeah. Hi. Hello. As you were talking about just the topic of soul, what I what came to mind is how's that different from like consciousness? Like when you say that some people believe that there is a soul, which is I guess
Mm,
side of us. Well, how is that different from just
mm,
consciousness of it itself? Because maybe I'm getting this confused, but I'm to understand that there's a continuum of us. So is that perhaps what a soul is meant by when people say that it's a soul, it's a continuum?
mm.
Or is it something
And
completely
so,
different?
mm. And so I think that if we were to agree upon a definition of soul, like a dictionary definition that everyone would agree upon, then we can we can compare a consciousness and a soul and see whether they're the same or whether they're different. I haven't done my homework. I should have Googled soul and come up with a definition of soul. Maybe some of you have done it while I was speaking. But anyway, I don't have the Google definition of soul, but I can say that according to Buddhism, a consciousness is that which is clear and knowing. I can Google the definition of soul. All right, let's. All right. Definition of soul. It's a spiritual or immaterial part of a human being or animal regarded as immortal. Then it is an emotional, intellectual energy or intensity, especially as revealed in the work of art or in an artistic performance. So these are two options. I guess that if you check out the dictionaries, that's from the Oxford Language Dictionary, it seems, you might come up with another definition. And so maybe there's things here which are similar to consciousness, but still it's not defined like consciousness. So, and consciousness in Buddhist philosophy is said to be that which is clear and knowing. So consciousness or cognition has an aspect of clarity, which means that it is like a mirror that can reflect objects, and it has a cognitive aspect. It knows things. So I'm not sure that the first part of the definition is exactly like consciousness, a spiritual or immaterial part of a human being or animal regarded as immortal. And so we can say that a consciousness is immortal in a sense that it is eternal. It is not born, it will not die, and therefore it is immortal. But I'm not sure that clear and knowing is exactly as a spiritual, immaterial part of a human being or animal. A consciousness is not necessarily emotional or intellectual. It can be just cognition, not just cognition, something which knows. Certainly, there is continuity. We speak about the continuity of consciousness from life to life. And if soul exists, maybe there's also continuity of soul. And so there's some similarities, but I think that at least so far as the definitions are concerned, they're not the same. Anyway, how do you guys see it? Same or different?
I see it as a label.
As a label.
Right.
Well,
When I talk with people that believe in a soul, what they're basically describing is what we describe as mind. So that's why I think it's just a name given, a label.
I think that we have to then ask ourselves, does it describe any, no, does the word soul to us describe any core value? Like, is this what is making us be who we are? A consciousness, from Buddhist perspective, we have consciousness, but the consciousness is subject to change. We are speaking about developing positive habits and eliminating negative traits, our ignorance, anger, and so forth. The whole premise of spiritual progress is based upon the idea that there's nothing fixed, concrete, solid, unitary, indivisible in our mind that makes it impossible to change. And so not only the mind is non-physical, we cannot really point and figure and say this is the mind because it's not physical, but also it doesn't have any inherently existing value that is concrete, that is reified. I'm not sure that kind of where the soul has the same implication, but we don't have to resolve it now. We don't have to come down on a solid conclusion. We can still keep thinking about it. And indeed, I think, Barbara, as you said, some people take that to mean the same. But in general, here, since we're speaking about emptiness, wanting to understand that things don't exist inherently, we also look at our own consciousness, at our own mind. Even if we believe in the existence of soul, and ask ourselves, can we find this grain, this core that exists inherently in and of itself that make us be who we are independently?
So the importance of differentiating has to do with emptiness. That's why it's important to really nail down the definition of what a soul is and what mind is in order to understand emptiness.
I think that maybe it's important for us. It's not maybe it's not of utmost importance, because this term for soul doesn't exist in Buddhist philosophy. I mentioned it because this is something that we grew up, that I don't know if all of us, but I grew up with, a soul. And so maybe it's good for us to ask those questions. Is consciousness and soul the same or different? In order to understand what the meaning is of the lack of inherent existence of myself. I do not inherently exist. I don't have this core, this essence, a soul, so to speak, or even consciousness that inherently exists, that exists in the object itself, in this makeup of body and mind, or outside of this body and mind that is unchanging, that exists in and of itself independently. This is what we need to understand. Cynthia?
Hi, Venerable. Thanks for your teachings. I don't know how to ask this question, but I'm just wondering why the teachings emphasize that we shouldn't assert that there's something there, that we should just negate but not affirm something when we know. So I guess I'm just, because that I know we talk about, because otherwise you end up in a nihilistic point of view, right? If there's a nothing, there is a danger. If I don't affirm something, I do find sometimes that, oh, well, if there's nothing there, it must be nothing. So then we do tend to try and affirm something so that we're not in the nihilistic side of it, if that makes sense. So that's a little bit difficult for me to understand why, because when you're explaining it, we know, well, there's something, but it lacks inherent existence because it depends on something, all these different things. But there is something. So thanks.
And so yesterday I made some further preparation, and we're going to look it up maybe next week. Okay, I can't find it now. Anyway, we'll look at that next week or the week after that. So we're looking for something where it should be. If something exists in the object itself, not through the subjective mind, but in the object itself, in and of itself, inherently, then we should find it when we look for it. If we find something, it means that it inherently exists. So this is what we're looking for. No, we're not trying to find different things like vegetables, fruits, pleasure, pain. We're trying to find an inherently existing thing where it should be. If we are going through a procedure that's sort of that tries to look for it, and we find it, it inherently exists. So if we affirm something, if we hold on to something, it means that it was found, that we found something. And so in the process of looking for something that inherently exists, we want to come to the conclusion that since it was not found, it doesn't exist. If we do affirm something in the process, it means that we've found something. So that's one bit of it. Another bit of it, the second part, is avoiding nihilism. Now, it's something that I wanted to speak about next week or the week after that, but I'll say it now, even though it might be kind of completely difficult, and we've been speaking about it for 1.5 hours, so you might be a little bit tired. According to particularly the Madhyamika philosophy, particularly things that Jetsun Kappa emphasized, not only just him, but also based on Chandrakirti's writing, Nagarjuna's writing. When you look for it, you cannot find it. But when you don't look for it, functionality is still tenable. It still exists. An agent, an action still exists. So we don't go into a nihilistic view. We are trying to understand how things exist, but being merely labeled by mind. If you look for them, you cannot find them. If you don't look for them, they still exist. They exist as being merely imputed by mind. So this is where we can know when we don't look for them, this is when we can affirm their existence. They exist because they depend upon cause and conditions. They depend upon parts. They exist because they are merely labeled by the mind. But when you look for them, you cannot find them. So trying to hold these two together is so difficult. I mean, this is the complication of the Madhyamika Prasangika thing. All other philosophies within Buddhist philosophy that assert inherent existence say that if you look for something, you have to find it. If you cannot find it, how can it exist? The Madhyamika Prasangika philosophy is the only philosophy that says if you look for something to see whether it inherently exists, you won't find it. But if you don't look for it, it can still exist. It can still function. It functions as a dependently arisen thing, as something that is merely labeled by mind. So we'll speak about it more. Barbara, last question or point before we leave it here for today.
And I think this will be an easier question for you. Of the 5 aggregates, can you talk a little bit more about primary consciousness? I'm not clear about that.
Okay. And so when you study a topic that is called in Tibetan Lorig, it's part of the basic program within the FPMT, then you study about the 7 types of awareness. And then another part of it is studying a topic that is called mind and mental factors. Minds and mental factors basically describes how the mind works. And it looks at the consciousness, our consciousness, and tries to, from different perspectives, mentally isolate different mental events, different functions of the mind. And so mental factors are like, for example, different processes. Like, for example, anger is a process, mental event. Attachment is a mental event. Feeling or sensation is a mental event. Discrimination is a mental event. Likewise, there are 51 mental factors and mental events which are described in that text. There are more mental events or mental functions, but at least 51 mental factors which are important to us are described in that text. So there are those mental events. They engage different functions, different attributes of a certain object. It is like this, it is not like that. I like it, I dislike it, it's good, it's bad, and so on and so forth. So that's These are the mental factors. And then the mind, it engages just the object as an entity without the mind or primary consciousness. It just engages the object without making those distinctions, without having kind of a really specific function. So that's primary consciousness. Again, it's kind of a way of looking at consciousness and isolating different functions, different events in the consciousness from an intellectual and academic perspective. But the mind itself is like an ongoing stream that functions. So you have primary consciousness that primarily engages the object, the entity, and mental factors, they engage the different functions, the different attributes of an object.
So in the primary consciousness, it cognizes something, and then all the other things take over. Is that correct?
So we have,
the discrimination then takes over, and the feeling takes over.
So rather than taking over, they function together with the main minds. So in order to have a complete cognition of a certain object, we need, where is it? Here it is. Oh, it's not this. All right. So in order to be able to enjoy, to utilize an object fully, then you need a primary consciousness that engages the object. And then you have discrimination, a mental event that works together simultaneous with that consciousness, focusing on the same object and discriminates it. It is like this, it is not like that. This is, for example, this is Karen, this is not Karen. So discrimination, but also feelings, is a mental event that works together with primary consciousness. Pleasure, pain, neutral sensation. Then we have all other mental functions, mental events that work together with a primary consciousness. All of them are grouped together into composition factors. Yeah, so it's not that one thing happens after the next. They're all happening, working together in order
It happens simultaneously, but you need to have that primary consciousness for it to all happen together.
Yeah.
Okay, I get it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so let's leave it here for now. Thank you very much, people. Next week, I will be in India, in Delhi. So I think that the laws of the internet will favor me, will favor us, and there will be no, hopefully, internet issues. So we will leave it here for today. We're dedicating all the virtue, the merit that we have accumulated together in working hard on trying to develop the wisdom of emptiness. And as I said before, in drawing from what Aryadeva said, those who don't have merit will not even question the meaning of emptiness. So we have merit. We question the meaning of emptiness. We develop interest in the meaning of emptiness. And through that, Aryadeva is saying, we're trying to tear cyclic existence to shreds. So the tearing to shreds will occur slowly, but we are in that process. So with that in mind, we dedicate all the virtue that we have accumulated together for the tearing away to shreds cyclic existence, not only for us, but also for the sake of all living beings. And in order to be able to do so, we need also to have bodhicitta. So we will dedicate a merit for the flourishing of bodhicitta and the view of emptiness. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that is not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. And then for the wisdom path, may the supreme jewel, the view of emptiness that is not arisen, arise and grow, and may that which is arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain to the state of Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. So thank you very much, everyone that joined us today. Thank you very much for Sheila and for Karen that helped with total meltdown of Sheila's computer, and for everyone else in Tup the Nobling Center that is helping us, that is supporting us. May we be able to do it again and again. Thank you.